Okay, hello everyone. Good night, or good evening. My name is Kyle Jones. I am finishing my second year towards a PhD in religion at Claremont Lincoln University, which, as you guys probably have heard, if you've heard of it at all, it's supposed to be one of the first interreligious universities, not only in America, but in the world. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just interfaith people, but also humanists, skeptics, atheists, agnostics that are involved in the dialogue. So that's why I'm there. That's what my goal is ultimately in my life, to bridge some of these gaps between believers and unbelievers. Most of my friends are religious in one way or another. Friend Matt right here, got a liberal Catholic. Blake, liberal, liberal Baptist, and that is not an oxymoron. That's right. Jeremiah, both of my friends Jeremiah back there, another liberal Catholic. Well, I guess. I'll call you that for now. So, my talk is called Inter-faitheism, why atheists should be involved in interfaith dialogue. Now, this is why I'm involved in interfaith dialogue. Now, I know it's strange to begin any sort of lecture with a picture of Tony Blair, okay? Because we've already forgotten about him by now, right? But, as we know, the recent convert to Catholicism, who debated one of my favorite, who just passed, favorite journalists and philosophers, Christopher Hitchens, on the issue of interfaith and secularity. And what he concluded is that these things are in opposition to each other. That is, interfaith people need to unite together against the rises of atheism, secularism, and the lack of morality that comes about with the rise of these groups. So this is the type of person that I firmly disagree with. I do not think that these things are incompatible. In fact, I think they need to be compatible. So, funny picture of Tony Blair. Now, the atheist, right? What do people think about atheists? So this is this one's funny, I like it a lot, because you'll notice a couple things, right? First of all, big beast, gorilla, man-looking thing with a godless thing over his head. Notice the red here, it's got kind of that communist feel. See the factories behind? You got like factory workers slaving in there, you know? Picking up the innocent Christians right here and kind of walking through like King Kong and destroying Christian villages. Godless atheists, like you need to have both of those next to each other, threaten Christian civilization. This is not just any civilization, this is Christian civilization. So I really want to counteract the notion that atheists are this. The atheists today are not communist, for the most part, communist Russians, or Stalin, or Mao. A lot of people think even Hitler, a lot of people associate Hitler as the ideal atheist. When any glance at Mein Kampf, he mentions throughout it that he is a Catholic, or he considers himself a Catholic. Of course, my friend Matt would disagree with that, and I probably do too. If he was one, he was a horrible Catholic. But he was also into occultish stuff. But people think of this guy as an atheist. They think of all these. And then they think of communist Russia and all these issues on one side. And then the other images that pop in their head are kind of the anarchism of something like Revolution-era France. Right? The cult of reason, these kind of things. So on one side, they think of atheists as anarchic. And on the other side, they see them as totalitarian. So these are the images that I want to counteract. Okay, this was a study done recently. People were asked, national study, asked to respond to, this group does not at all agree with my vision of American society. Atheists rank the highest at 39.6%, above Muslims and homosexuals. When asked to respond to, would disapprove if my child wanted to marry a member of this group, atheists rank highest at 47.6%. Okay, so if you're proposing to someone, definitely don't say you're an atheist. Now, this is very high. This study done by Penny Edgell, I think at the University of Minnesota. And she had done this, let's see, after 9/11, expecting the highest to be Muslims. But no, atheists with a very disproportionate amount be Muslims, homosexuals, blah, 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 blah. So, Americans don't trust atheists. They're the least trusted group in America. So, in America, we're kind of afraid of this guy. We're really afraid of this guy. But we're really afraid of this guy. And you had mentioned Hitchens earlier, so I thought I'd give some shout out to him. The nuns, okay? I like to think of this as the rise of the nuns. They have no stated religious preference, atheist or agnostic, or some consider naturalist, skeptic. A lot of these nuns, by the way, are not atheists. A large part of these nuns actually still have spiritual beliefs. They just do not appreciate organized religion, necessarily. But they've grown, right? They grew highest in the 90s, from 8.2% in 90 to 14% in 2001, 15 in 2008. Now it's 16 or 17% of the American population identify as nun. So this means this has doubled in a little over a decade. That is an exponential growth of nuns. This is the chart of the amount of nuns, not Catholic nuns. And notice here, 1990, 175 million. Boom, almost 208 million in 2001 to now 228 million. So that's a really, really high growth. And that's the 2000 census, I believe, or something like that. Now, this is the interesting part. We have this rise in America of all of these nuns, right? And yet we have 71% of people in the UK and 78.4% in the US that identify themselves as Christians. So it's not, depending on what your definition of Christian is, you could say, oh, well, no, a large portion of these people aren't actual Christians, right? They're heretics, or they're whatever, they're from the wrong sect. But as far as self-identification is concerned, this is a huge amount of people in this country that check Christian under religious affiliation. I always find it funny when people say how religiously diverse America is, especially when I look at this statistic. It is, in a lot of ways, more diverse than almost any country, but still, 78% of people identifying as Christians in America doesn't seem too diverse to me. This is the religious adherence, right? So the darker the red is, the more religious, the more they adhere to their religion. That is religious intensity, things like how often they go to church, how often they pray, how often they read their Bibles or practice spiritual disciplines, etc. This isn't just Christian, by the way. This is anyone who considers himself religious. So the lighter it gets, the less religious they are. So notice how, okay, so the lightest here is less than 35.1%. But notice how there's no white box. No completely white box for just atheists or nuns. Because you can't find them. They're not large enough to be on something like this. I mean, this is how thoroughly religious this country is. Extremely religious.
What are those orange boxes in Southern California? There's one like up by Santa Barbara, maybe?
Oh, what, this?
Yeah.
That is 50 to 75%.
Oh, where is that?
I don't know.
Like
so this is like LA, right? So yeah, I don't know exactly where that is.
Like Solvang, Santa Maria.
But even the yellow is 35 to 50%. So that's still a lot too.
Well, maybe maybe it's military base.
I mean, there's military bases north of there. I would assume that part is heavily religious.
Yeah, and when you get into NoCal, you'll see it drops.
Well,
right?
Look at Oregon.
And who wants to, yeah, Oregon, right? liberal, non-religious city there, right? Or state there. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe when you get up in the redwoods and you can clear your mind, you're less religious. Now, this is what's going to happen after the class. This class. We're gonna, oh, sorry. Boom. That was my attempt to have a white box of some kind of influence. Of course, it's not going to spread that far. Now, voting patterns. Another reason why interfaith people should accept atheists or unbelievers, and unbelievers should engage in interfaith, is that surprisingly, moderate to liberal religious persons vote in the same way that atheists and unbelievers do. Okay? 32% of those who identify as secular are Democrats, 43% of them are independents, while those with lower levels of religious intensity generally vote Democrat or independent. As Cosman and Kazar point out, only 1 in 9 Republicans has a secularist outlook compared with 1 in 5 Democrats and 1 in 4 independents. So my joke is always, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a Republican atheist. Despite the neoconservative policies of someone like Hitchens, who adopted those views after 9/11, or some things that Sam Harris has said that seem to indicate kind of conservative political, these people do not represent the majority of atheists. Okay, the majority of atheists vote Democrat or independent and are socially liberal. So, imagine for a second that this represents interfaith dialogue. I know it's homogenous. They're all men. They're all Jewish. They're all around Christ, right? Last Supper. Who would the atheist be?
Judas.
Thank you. The atheist would be Judas, right? I mean, and that's what this perception that I'm trying to kind of counteract is, that the atheist, when they want to be involved in interfaith dialogue, is not necessarily out to be Judas. It's not necessarily out to deliberately sort of take people away from their faith. I mean, they're to challenge, they're to dialogue, they're to engage. But we, as atheists, are not Judas. Right? That's to indicate he was the atheist. And this one's funny. Instead of Judas, just consider us doubting Thomas. Okay? And on the top here, I will not accept that Jesus is the Son of God until I see the long-form birth certificate. And then this is Thomas, obviously, famous picture, you know, got to touch his side, got to get the evidence, the empirical evidence. So let's consider atheists, not Judas, but doubting Thomas. And I want to give a shout out to someone who I know who's involved in work like this. His name is Chris Stedman and others at the Harvard Humanist Chaplaincy under Greg Epstein and such, who are doing all kinds of work to try to build bridges between atheists and unbelieving communities and religious groups. So this is a book recently came out from Beacon Press in Boston, Faith-ism, How an Atheist Found Common Ground with the Religious by Chris Stedman. I know this guy, he's a great guy, and I recommend it. So, in conclusion, there are all kinds of reasons why interfaith dialogue should include atheists and unbelievers. We have the misconceptions that are there about atheists as immoral, as people you cannot trust and who you do not want to marry your child. You have the misconception of, or we forget how radically religious this country is. Thirdly, we have the rise of the nuns, this radical shift in nuns and this decline of sort of Christianity in the West and specifically the UK and the US. And then fourthly, we have similar voting patterns. You can actually find similar voting patterns minus conservative Christians, conservative Jews, conservative Muslims, although Muslims are an interesting case. But anyway, so there are 4 reasons right there why atheists should be involved in interfaith dialogue. We're in the same world, we share the same oxygen, let's work together, and let's try to counteract false stereotypes. That's it.
Okay, you have your work cut out for you. Are we?
Yeah.
Comments, questions? Yeah.
Hey Kyle, I'm curious if you're taking kind of a myopic view of the rise of the nuns by just looking at a decade of expansion. I mean, theoretically, we should be looking at the last, I don't know, 5,000 years or something along those lines. Just kind of seems like we're kind of cherry picking by looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with your, similar voting practices and maybe working towards social justice issues and things like that is a great kind of avenue to advocate for interreligious dialogue. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, if this really is a trend of an increasing percentage of people taking on secularist views, or are we just being a bit myopic and cherry picking?
Good.
At the last thing.
Good question. I totally appreciate that question. All right, so firstly, me living in 2012, all I really care about is sort of my lifetime and what that will indicate, or what will be going on in my lifetime. I don't necessarily care about what's going to go on in the lifetime of future selves nearly as much as I care about what's going on in my present self. So, yes, that's based on demographics from not just a decade, multiple decades, but usually roughly 30, 40 years. So like a generation, right? So you're correct. I don't have a scale that proves Freud's theory of secularization, that with the rise of scientific knowledge, religious observance will be depleted. I do not believe in that. I think that's an outdated and incorrect view of secularization. But secularization has occurred very strongly over the last 150 years in the UK and in America. A great sociologist, Steve Bruce, mentions this in his book, God is Dead, the rise of secularism. So it just shows a plethora of statistics that indicate this over 100 to 150 years in the UK and the US. So the nuns, the secularists, it is a fact that they are growing. That is an indisputable fact as far as I'm concerned. And now this gets into self-identification, right? So these nuns may, they may consider themselves religious in some way, but they're not part of any organized religion. Or they don't consider themselves that. So there's a two-pronged response to you, and I don't know if that addresses.
I guess my issue would be does that assume then that there always hasn't been some kind of secular Christian or some kind of fence sitter?
Yeah, see, I can't make broad global claims. I don't have the information. Like you said, 5,000 years. There are no statistics that were even around or employed at that time. I mean, science wasn't even, the social sciences hadn't even emerged. So I can't speak on a sort of grand scale. I can only say here, now, in the last 40, 50 years, nuns have skyrocketed and secularization has occurred in an explicit way in the UK and in the US. That's all I can really say.
Do you think that that the notion of a civil religion is incompatible with atheism? And I ask that just because, and this goes back to what the gentleman over in the corner was saying earlier. He kind of drew a distinction between religion and faith, and I kind of feel the same thing. I think that there's adaptive qualities to both, but it's easy for the faith thing to get maladaptive because then you start, like you said, to think about future lives. But the religion thing, it's it can organize people's lives, and like the Albert Schweitzer thing, promotes social justice. So I wonder if you think, how do you feel about that? If there's like positive aspects of religion that can be embraced by atheists without that sort of faith underpinning.
Yes, because as far as I'm concerned, I've never met an atheist that's concerned with any other world but this. So yes, all that matters from an atheist worldview, as far as I know or I'm concerned of, is this life. So what are the effects? What are the physical, social, psychological effects that we can observe originating or stemming from religious beliefs, right? Sorts of actions, types of the way people are treated, etc. These things matter to atheists. And you can believe kind of whatever you want. If you treat your neighbor correctly, if you're just a common sense, decent person, then fine. I'll disagree with your beliefs and I'll challenge them, But what I really care about, more than your beliefs, are your actions. I care about actions first and beliefs second. Shermer may disagree with me. I'm not entirely sure if beliefs, and the correlation between how strongly a belief influences an action is difficult to determine as well. Matt, and then.
Okay, so I'm a theist. I believe in God, and you do not. Where does our point of contact take place for this dialogue that you think we should have?
Pubs.
Pubs.
Pubs. Bars.
These are pubs.
Yeah, we mentioned Hume earlier.
Yeah.
We go to the pub together. I mean, what do we do? We hang out. We talk Heidegger. We we have a beer. We hang out. We chat. We talk. We chill. And that's what matters. I mean, I will be honest with you. It's easier for me to hang out with you because you're liberal. I have a harder time. I have a harder time with conservative religious folks. I'll be the first to admit it. I mean, because there's not as much common ground, but there's still some, and that needs to be harnessed and developed. Blake?
Is there something inherent in atheism that would make kind of the organization difficult? Because I think with interreligious dialogue, you have this group going and this group going, and whether it's the group or like a leader from that group going to represent them for this dialogue, is the fact that you can't say, well, here's the atheist representative who's representing all the rest of the atheists to be at the table. Like, is there something inherent in the idea that would make it difficult to say, okay, here's our group coming to the table?
Yeah, that's a good question. That always gets asked of modern sort of modern atheism. And yes, atheists like to not have any compulsion to go anywhere on Sunday. If I don't want to go to church, if I don't want to go to this, I don't have to. And I think it's a general recoil against organized religion and groupthink that we see in large established religious institutions. So there's that. But then there's also all of these atheist groups popping up all over the place. The Center for Inquiry, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Skeptic. I mean, that are very substantial bodies of unbelievers. The interesting thing, though, is that at places like Claremont, Lincoln, or other interfaith-focused establishments, they are considered kind of a separate camp, right? You got your skeptics here with their skeptical thing, you got your Center for Inquiry people here, you got your Project Reason people here, and then you got your interfaith dialogue over here. My point is just shove them together. We share this world together. So you're right, there's sort of a logistical issue, but that's what I'm trying to start. Like, I'm trying to start maybe motivating atheists to become more involved. Am I?
Yeah,
Am I out?
we should just do one more.
One more?
Oh.
Or, sorry. Was there someone before that I missed?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, I don't dispute, because you look around and there's so many secularists give more to organizations, and there's all this theory behind why that is and things like that. But, so I like the question about organization. Can they organize? And of course they can organize, Can there be an atheist charismatic leader that's not a jerk? This is a dead serious question because there's two different things going on here. There's sort of this mobilization, science, like this kind of amorphous, what is our identity kind of a thing.
Yes.
And it's coming into contact with mainstream society. How do you change that perception? Do you want to change that perception? It seems like the only way to do it is to have more figures that aren't such a-holes.
Yes. Well, the only way I can do it is to be an atheist who's not an asshole. I'm still kind of one in certain ways, but I try my best. And yeah, I love Richard Dawkins. I love Christopher Hitchens. They're brash, they're harsh, they're bombastic. I like the sort of militant atheist side of me loves that. But yes.
Because that doesn't.
Do I think they may possibly be arrogant and full of themselves? Absolutely. But there needs to be more atheists that step up, that are willing to maybe have the same content as people like Dawkins and Hitchens without the same method of delivery. right? I mean, the way you say things matters a lot. I mean, the content does too, but the manner in which you do it means a ton. So, how effective is Hitchens calling Mother Teresa a sacred cow? I don't know. You know, how would that isolate people or bring people together more? I'm not sure. But, you know, if I'm talking with someone who really loves Mother Teresa, I'm going to try to be cordial to the best of my ability without losing my content. Because I can't lose my content, but I have to find a way for the message to also be received. So I agree with you. There are tons of atheists out there that I think could use a little humility, myself included.
Well, all social movements go through these stages where they purge the not pure kind. You know, who's the real feminist, or who's the real this or that, Marxist, communist, whatever. That's just normal purging.
Yeah.
And then I should just note on the Sunday morning thing, you know, Dorothy Parker's explanation or answer for why she doesn't go to church on Sunday mornings, because she said, I'm too fucking busy, and vice versa. Anyway, so
exactly.
Sorry about that, but
all right, thank you.
All right,
guys.
so yeah, thank you very much. All right.